The Italian Renaissance was a period after the unenlightened Middle Ages were over. It was a new age that was a rebirth of learning and literature, art and culture. This is the birth of the period now known as the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, a new modern way of thinking about the world and man's place in it replaced an old, backwards one. Renaissance scholars and philosophers used classical sources. There was especially an emphasis on man's own achievements.
Many Italian Renaissance scholars and philosophers believed in the philosophy known as humanism. Humanism is an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to humans rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. It is based on the idea that people are basically good and that problems can be solved using reasons instead of religion. A main focus of humanism is devotion to humanities. This involves the revival of classical letters, individualistic and critical spirit, and emphasis on secular concerns characteristics of the Renaissance. Renaissance scholars celebrated the works of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Humanism broke from the medieval tradition of having pious religious motivation for creating art or works of literature. Humanist writers glorified the individual and believed that man was the measure of all things and had unlimited potential. The humanists also had a great effect on education because they stimulated the creative powers of the individual. Humanists promoted the concept of well-rounded or the Renaissance man. Plato and Aristotle had a big influence on humanist writers.
Petrarch was known as the father of humanism. Petrarch wrote many sonnets in Italian. They expressed his love for the beautiful Laura. They greatly influenced other writers at this time. Il Canzoniere has a central theme of Petrarch's love for Laura. These poems were written over a period of 40 years. These poems became the single greatest influence on the love poetry of the Renaissance in Europe until the 17th century. The biggest purpose of the Canzoniere is to praise Laura, yet questions concerning the virtue of love in relation to the Christian religion and desire are always present. There is a paradox in Petrarch's love stories, where love is desired yet painful. Fluctuation between these states is a means of expressing this instability. Works of Petrarch have humanist ideals because it puts a prime importance on the human rather than divine or supernatural matters. It emphasizes human needs such as falling in love and seeks solely rational ways of solving human problems. It followed the idea that problems can be solved using reason instead of religion. The lack of religious themes in this book shows that it is truly a humanist work. Humanist writers glorified the individual and believed that man was a measure of all things and had unlimited potential. Petrarch says in the Canzoniere, "Love, wisdom, merit, pity, suffering, sang in the tears a sweeter sound, concert than any other one that the world has heard." This line clearly exemplifies how humanism was an important part in this story. Another example from Petrarch's Canzoniere is, "Women by nature is a fickle thing, and I know very well that loving feelings don't last long even in the best one's heart." This example clearly shows how Petrarch was thinking about the individual and human problems rather than divine and Christian ideas. Petrarch's sonnets became a model for lyrical poetry. He's also known for being the first to develop the concept of the Dark Ages. Il Canzoniere was a humanist work of the Italian Renaissance.
Boccaccio was an Italian author, poet, and was an important Renaissance humanist. He began his work on the Decameron around 1349. The Decameron was a book containing 100 tales told by a group of 7 young women and 3 young men in a secluded villa just outside Florence to escape the Black Death. There are also tales of wit, practical jokes, and life lessons. Values of quick wit, sophistication, and intelligence are treasured, while stupidity and dullness are punished. These traits and values may seem obvious to us today, but they were just an emergent feature in Europe at the time. Previous systems placed greater value on piety and loyalty.
Ludovico Ariosto was another Italian Renaissance humanistic writer. Ariosto wrote Orlando Furioso, an Italian epic poem. This poem had an influence on later culture. It is about Orlando, a Christian knight known in English as Roland. The main action of the story takes place in the background of the war between Charlemagne's Christian paladins and the Saracen army that is attempting to invade Europe. It is about war and love and the romantic ideal of chivalry. It is both real and fantasy, humor and tragedy. Many themes within the book, but the most important is Orlando's love for the pagan princess Angelica. This drives him completely mad. It is one of the most influential works of European literature. It has been the inspiration for many works of art, including paintings by Tiepolo, Ingres, Roldan, and a series of illustrations by Gustave Doré. The emphasis on human problems and solutions is a big humanistic theme throughout the book. It focuses on individuals and doesn't exactly focus on religion. Leonardo da Vinci was perhaps the greatest figure of the Renaissance. Da Vinci excelled in many subject areas, including sculpting, engineering, biology, painting, and many others. He also had many ideas and inventions. They were not built until after he died. His most famous completed work is the Mona Lisa. He was also a polymath, painter, sculptor, architect, musician, mathematician, engineer, inventor, anatomist, and painter, and very diversely talented. He epitomized the Renaissance man and the Renaissance humanist ideal. Leonardo's studies of science included art and meshed the two subjects together, which had not been done before. His notes and drawings fused art and natural philosophy. Leonardo's notes and drawings display a range of interests and preoccupations. Some examples are studies of faces and emotions of animals, babies, dissections, plant studies, rock formations, whirlpools, war machines, flying machines, and architecture. He had an observational approach to science, which was definitely a humanist ideal. He tried to understand phenomena by describing and depicting it in detail. He did not emphasize theoretical explanation.
The Vitruvian Man was a drawing that depicts a man in two positions with his arms and legs apart, inscribed in a circle and a square. It is based on the correlations of ideal human proportions. This figure is described as being the principal source of proportion among the classical orders of architecture. This image demonstrates the blend of art and science during the Renaissance. This was directly related to humanism. Da Vinci believed that the workings of the human body was an analogy for the workings of the universe.
The significance and importance of the Italian Renaissance is that it was a huge shift from Dark Ages in medieval times to a period of enlightenment, art, and learning. Humanistic ideals were a huge part of the Italian Renaissance and can be observed through all the works of literature, art, and music. Many works from the Italian Renaissance had a big impact and influenced the future greatly. Many works from the Italian Renaissance drew inspiration and referenced the past, from Greek and Roman times mostly. Humanism was the most prevalent theme throughout literature and other works of the Italian Renaissance. This new emphasis on the individual and mankind totally shifted the world and pushed society in the direction of discovery and learning.